We live here. This is our curve.
There's a chopper.
This is our team. Where we play, where we learn, where we watch the leaves fall, and where we tie the knot. Our history was built here.
Hi guys, I'm Scott, and I was born and raised in Altoona, Pennsylvania. Then I moved away to Florida for about a decade, and recently I moved my family, my wife and my toddler, back up here, back to home. This video is about rediscovering the area, kind of figuring out things to do, areas to check out, things that are mentioned on, if you do a Google search or TripAdvisor. I will pose the question to you. If you had 48 hours in Altoona to entertain some out-of-town guests, where would you take them? When I lived in Fort Myers, Florida, I always took people to the River District for a bar tour. There's a baseball team that's named the Altoona Curve, and it's because of the history that Altoona has with the railroad. My pap worked for the railroad for basically his entire life. Altoona was basically built, the population increased because of all the people that worked for the railroad over the years. And so the Altoona Curve is kind of the world famous Altoona Curve is here, and it's a beautiful spot. It's a place where the gigantic trains come along. You can get real close to them, and they sort of come regularly, every half a dozen of them every hour. We went up there and it was fall, so the leaves were changing. It was beautiful. It looked like this. When I worked for WTAJ, we actually did a special story on it, and I learned during that story that the Horseshoe Curve was actually a target for a pretty elaborate Nazi plot to take out the curve. A group of spies that came to America that were going to plant bombs and try to destroy the Horseshoe Curve because it had such a significant impact on America's ability to move and transport wartime needs. There's a lot of history, and it's beautiful. You know, if you like to just check out the fall leaves, Horseshoe Curve was pretty awesome. And in keeping with the railroad, because the railroad is such an integral part of central Pennsylvania and its history, we also, for the first time, went to the Allegheny Portage Railroad. This is something that I grew up here and I'd never even heard of it. It's one of those things when, you know, it's right beside you, sometimes you take it for granted. We went up to the Allegheny Portage Railroad Museum. We watched a little 20-minute video, I think, just about how before the Altoona Curve came along and there was the ability and power with steam engines to get the freight cars up over the mountains. Before that, there was a short-lived, I think it was a couple decades, where they would actually take boats up over the Allegheny Mountains so that you could connect Pittsburgh to Philadelphia. And I mean, you talk about kind of a grueling trip for anyone, we're talking 1850s, cut down the travel time from weeks to days. And it was an engineering feat. And I always appreciate history. It's one of those things where you hear about how dangerous it was and like the runaway cars.
It was necessary in order to save his life.
People getting killed by things, like you marvel at the way things used to be, you know, 150 years ago. In one of my previous videos, I had talked about how I went out to Baker Mansion. So we actually went and visited Baker Mansion for the holidays. They had Santa there. My daughter wouldn't sit still for Santa, but we got to go inside. We didn't go on the big grand tour because toddlers don't exactly hold up very well. You know, we were greeted with some milk and cookies, the Blair County Historical Society. Even without the tour, they you know, were happy to tell us a little bit of the history of Baker Mansion and the area. It's a pretty old historic house, massive white columns. You know, I used to go sled riding there when we were growing up, so depending on the time of year you're visiting, might be a spot to go sled riding. Central Pennsylvania in the fall is one of the best times of year. It's one of the reasons we moved back here is because we were in Florida, there were no seasons. My wife and I both really appreciate the fall season. We really like, you know, Christmas. Those are weird when it's 80 degrees. So those are some of the historic sites that we've been checking out. One of my own inputs is being away from home, seeing a lot of other parts of the world, and then coming back. One of the things that I've grown to appreciate is what I would call the house bar. If you take away sort of the awning and the sign on the front, it's a house, and people built bars in it. Mike's Court is one example. It's such a comfortable, cozy little bar. You know, the owner will whip you up a roast beef sandwich. We've been going down to the Trianon on Tuesdays for trivia. Trianon was where yours truly got started working after college. That was the first place that I bartended, so I might throw together a whole video just dedicated to house bars, comfort bars in Altoona. What's your favorite? Comment, let me know why it's the best house bar in Altoona. All right guys, Merry Christmas. If you didn't already see my last few videos, check out the Altoona Pizza at 29th Street, pizza, subs, and more. Till next time.